Greetings, Titans fans. Hello and welcome to the Two Tone Crew. This is episode 130. I'm John Boy, and we are the official podcast of TitansReport.com, coming to you live once again. Jamal, how are you liking this live thing? I think I'm kind of enjoying it.
I enjoy recording live, but it's just more difficult for me to make for some reason. Sunday night seems to be
Sunday night.
It's like the witching hour with my children. So I was coming up the stairs to sit down and record, and my son woke up, which usually means I have to lay down and convince him to go back to sleep, that it's not morning yet. So here we are late.
Life happens, right?
Thanks for waiting.
Yeah, no problem. And Scotty's back once again as well.
What's up, guys?
Not much. I was seriously debating the way this game was starting to go. I was thinking about tapping out of the podcast for tonight. I'm not going to lie. When it was going downhill, I was seriously considering saying,
John, a train wreck was
cancel it.
almost as interesting as a party sometimes.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's one way of thinking about it. So, yeah, Titans end up with a victory. And all in all, when you all things considered, it was actually a great day for the Titans in terms of everything else that happened around the league. But the way that we got this win wasn't really quite what many expected. At least I don't think it was. Bears got out to an early lead, and then the Titans offense came alive. Looked like they have for the past couple of weeks now. Put us out well in front. I think it was, 20 points at one point. And go to the half with the lead, come out, and onside kick, which the Bears recovered. So that's, and you were trying to run the numbers on this. Is that I know the Colts obviously got one on us. The Browns tried one, but they didn't get it, right, Jamal?
Right. Yeah. And I couldn't think of anyone else who did it, and I didn't take the time to actually research it. But I know we've tried 2 or 3 of them this year and failed every time. And then we've had at least 2 opponents hit us with them. So we've got to be among the league worst in terms of total net onside success rate.
Well, there's a lot obviously to talk about from this game because so much happened, especially with the way things ended after that onside kick. But like I said, at the end of the day, Titans get the victory. So in terms of the best things that happen, Titans get another win. That's huge. Texans lose. Colts lost on Thursday night. And the Rams lost today. So it was, all in all, it was a great day for our draft position as well as the small chance of playoff hopes that we have. We're now tied for the division lead in terms of the win column, but we have one more loss than the Texans because Titans one of the 2 teams in the NFL without a bye week. So we're heading into the bye. So we don't have as much to talk about, kind of at the end in terms of next week because it's going to be a bye week. But in terms of what happened this week, everything really went the Titans' way. As far as the game goes, when we're talking about positives, Mariota had another outstanding day. He keeps the streak going of consecutive multiple TD games. This week he had 2 more touchdown passes, one to Delaney Walker and one to Rashard Matthews, who, after a lot of back and forth last week about who was actually ahead, I think somebody did the numbers after the podcast and posted them, and were they within like 1 catch of each other before this game?
Yeah, on like 5 yards or something like that.
Yeah, it was almost identical.
Just insanely close, and they were both, of course, a big part of the offense today. So Mariota, guys, I mean, he's really coming into his own, or he's came into his own over the past few weeks, and it's so exciting, man. I mean, we're all kind of hoping for playoffs right now, small chance of the playoffs. But this season was really all about him. It was all about his development and how he was going to progress. And there were rocky moments in those first few weeks of the season where it looked like he'd regressed. He was having trouble getting used to the offense. And then the light bulb came on. And I think, what is it, Scotty, since week 5 or week 6 where he's just been lights out?
Yeah, I believe since week 5, yeah.
They kept flashing the numbers. I know he's only thrown 3 interceptions since then and a boatload of touchdown passes. So how excited are you about him right now? Because one of the questions we had, I guess we can lead with this question from our buddy Mercalius, who's been on the show before. Is it too early to crown Mariota as a franchise QB? And if so, how much longer does he have to keep up this level of play? You can take that one, Scotty, to start there. I'm sure we'll all want to comment on that one, though.
No, I don't think it's too early. I think I said it the last couple weeks. It's impossible to imagine him regressing after the play that he's put on the last several weeks. I mean, since week 5, the thing that's so shocking is how accurate he is down the field. I mean, some of these touchdown passes, like the one to Matthews today, I mean, that's as good as it gets right there. And he stopped turning the ball over. I mean, just everything has just came together all at once. It's really remarkable how much better he got since the first month of the season.
He had at least one interception in each of the first 4 games, and he has an interception in only 2 of the games since. So 2 of 8 since then.
I think going into next year, I would say he'll probably be a top 3 quarterback, top 3 to 5 quarterback going into the season.
How about you, Jamal? Too early for a franchise quarterback?
No, I mean, I think I probably used that terminology last year at some point, at least in terms of trajectory, where I thought that it was inevitable that he would become that. Now, if the question is he that now? My big hesitation is he's passing extremely efficiently and impressing basically every week, but partly the offense, but prolific-wise, he's had one 300-yard game this year, just one. I don't know if I don't know if he's the kind of guy who's going to go out there and just absolutely carry a team absent the run game. And that's kind of bleeds into other questions, but a lot of his success is the focus on the run game. That's the style of offense we have. So can they flip a switch and it becomes the Marcus Mariota show? You'd have to change the offense a decent bit, I think.
Jamal, I have to remind you, you weren't on the podcast the week after. Before the Green Bay game, you said if they don't run the ball, I don't think with their offense, they can just pass the ball. Mariota went out there and lit them up. So, I mean, I don't know why – you're not the only one, but I think they could pass the ball and be fine. If they can't run the ball that well, I think their offense would still be fine because of how well Mariota's playing. They haven't actually ran the ball that efficiently the last month or so.
Yeah, yes, but they're sticking with the run. I mean, it's the same offense. It's just one part of it's not performing that well. But I think I guess my point is they're not going to transition to an offense like you would think of with New Orleans or anything like that. It's just not the style of offense we have, and I think you'd have to change it quite a bit for Mariota to really just carry you consistently.
And you said 300 yards, okay, but going back to Jacksonville, which they had a huge early lead, 270, 313, 295, 290. So, I mean, a lot of these games, they're blowing the other team out, and he's still almost on for 300 yards. So,
yeah, that Jacksonville game, there was a lot of just coasting going on, kind of what they tried to do today and didn't work out. But
they got a big lead on Green Bay too. Listen to these passer ratings since the Miami game. 117, 132, 95, 148, 88, 149, 106, 126. I mean, that's like Aaron Rodgers' MVP season. The passer ratings are.
Passer ratings, yeah. But, I mean, it's all about how do you build efficiency. And some quarterbacks can be efficient passing 40-plus times a game every week as designed in their offense. They want the offense to flow through the quarterback. We don't have an offense that we want, that we have designed to flow through the quarterback, and we limit our quarterback dramatically by how much he's going to pass. Now, when we do go to pass, we do it extremely efficiently, but it's not Green Bay. It's not like their offense was.
The touchdown passes are right there too. I mean,
touchdown passes are very high. I mean, in terms of attempts and yards, where's your offense flowing through? And our offense is not designed to flow through Mariota. And you see all sorts of decisions they make throughout the game, running for it when the run hasn't been anything. I mean, he had 23 pass attempts today.
How many did he? What was his stats in the first half? You know,
I don't.
I
it seemed like he had 2 passes in the second half. So
his stats in the first half were 10 of 14, 139 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I mean,
So 14 passing attempts. It's
They
just not
had-
much.
they had a 20-point lead. I mean,
They had a 20-point lead because the other team is terrible. But I mean, it's consistent week to week. It's not just this game. They want to run the ball. That is their offense. That's just what they're going to do. And because of that, the defense has to play the run that sets up deep passes, and you end up passing efficiently. And Mariota's very good. And they're passing. I mean, they're scoring every week. I don't against the offense to point out that it's just not an offense designed to flow through the quarterback. And so I think that comes up. That's relevant in a discussion of, is he a franchise quarterback now?
yeah, but these are elite numbers. I mean, I don't understand exactly. Of course, it's going through the quarterback. Without the quarterback doing this, their offense wouldn't be any good.
Sorry, I'm getting a notification that my son is not going to go to sleep without me.
It's all good, man. Yeah, I'm honestly kind of like Scott a little bit. I'm not sure how we got to how you're linking. I mean, I think I get where you're going in terms of linking the two, but for me, in terms of the question of, is he a franchise quarterback? I said a few weeks ago, I think he's a franchise quarterback in terms of, to me, he is already. I mean, Andy Dalton is quote unquote a franchise quarterback because the way that guy is. Depends on how you define it.
Is he an elite quarterback? Is he an elite quarterback?
That's where I was going to go. That's, I think, the more intriguing question and kind of the territory we're starting to get into, because these, like you said, Scotty, are elite numbers. For me, I think elite is about longevity. Everybody last year's like, Cam Newton's elite. I said, well, he's playing elite, but I don't put him in the upper echelon of guys like Brady and Breeze and Roethlisberger who've done it year in and year out. So I think Mariota is getting into that Newton territory of, yeah, this guy is capable of elite stretches of play. Now let's see how long he can keep doing it, because so far this year he's been doing it for a pretty darn good stretch here. And if he's able to carry that into next year and build upon it, absolutely. So for me, he's a franchise QB with the capability of being elite. And like you said, Scotty, maybe even a top 3, top 5 quarterback next year, because the running game, it's interesting that you kind of tied it back to that, Jamal, because for me, I don't expect the offense to stay exactly as it is for the next couple of years. And I think they'll certainly kind of change that as the personnel changes and hopefully as they become more comfortable with Mariota. Right now, it's like you said, it's absolutely designed as a running offense, and that does limit how many passes he's going to have per game. But it's not always a bad thing when you're playing this efficient. And like this week and like last week, they're building these big leads. I don't fault them for running the ball so much as I do some of the timing of the play calling and the personnel, which we'll get into here in a little bit. But as far as like the original question goes, yeah, he's absolutely franchise QB. He's already for me on the level of Dalton and those kind of guys where he's your quarterback. I mean, if we had to make a decision tomorrow, are we giving him his extension and all that? Absolutely. I mean, you don't even hesitate. It's not even up for debate. They would absolutely do it. I think the exciting question now, though, is can this guy be elite, and how soon can he get there? Because he's absolutely playing elite right now. I don't know. Did we lose Jamal, or are you still there, Jamal? If we lost him, okay. I didn't know if you had to slip away or what.
Yeah, I am gonna have to slip away.
It happened. Life happens.
You're saying, well, I might be able to come back. We'll see. No big loss if I'm gone. But Andy Dalton, if he's a franchise quarterback, then yes. I mean, if it's whether or not you're going to stick with this guy long term, yeah, and I think that was decided last year. If you're interpreting franchise quarterback to mean he can carry a franchise, that's different. And I think then it's more.
See where you're going now.
It's more equivalent to elite quarterback. And I would say there's a question as to whether or not he's playing like an elite quarterback right now. And the only reason there's a question, it's not his efficiency, and it's not necessarily even the eye test. It's just, for me, an elite quarterback, it's hard to say he's an elite quarterback when there's not that level of prolific nature to his game, when he's not being asked to pass as much, to do as much, it's hard to then say he could do it if they were asking him to. I think he could, but there's just that gray area because it's never being asked of him. And it's hard to say a guy who's never being asked to pass, X times a game, if he's rarely ever passing for 300 yards. I mean, you can set the number at whatever you want. If it's going to be 290, he's done it 3 times this year. All 3 times in the last 4 games.
In the last, 3 out of the last 4.
But I mean, if it's 300, which is just a round number, so that's what I picked, and then I looked and I said, wow, only 1 time. There's a level of prolificness to, and I don't even know if that's a word, to an elite quarterback in my mind. And I'd say the difference between he and an Aaron Rodgers of the past, if you just look at how much they're asked to do, how much they're given the responsibility for, I think that starts to tell the tale for why, in my mind, there's a little bit of a difference. If it's efficiency, I mean, efficiency is partly a function of the offense, partly a function of the quarterback. And I think our offense is designed to try to make it so that our quarterback can do more when he does it, because we're not passing all the time. It's how do you create efficiency? And I think as a function of the offense, we're having a very efficient passing attack. Mariota's part of that, and it's just assigning the responsibility. I'm going to duck out. Maybe I'll be back. I'll let you guys know.
Alrighty. You got any response to that? I know you probably wish you'd be here to respond back, but I'm sure you have something to reply back on that, Scott.
I mean, the very definition of the passer rating, you really can't. I mean, the quarterback has to perform well to have a high passer rating. The offense can't make a quarterback be accurate and all that stuff. He's doing that. I don't think the passing yards really mean anything with how they've been winning some of the games. When they fell behind San Diego and the Colts, but I mean, when he was definitely the focal point then, he was fine. I mean, he was doing what he had to do. He's not, well, he was against San Diego, but his passing ability in the offense was fine in terms of getting him back in the game.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know that it's necessarily a bad thing that you don't have to rely on him 100%, because you look at some of these guys who are having to just throw the football a ton. I mean, it's like that. It's the Jags game is a perfect example, because you look at those numbers and you say, wow, Blake Bortles really carried that team and had a great game. When if you watch that game, he was terrible through 3 quarters. And then when the team had no other choice but to pass, he passed and put up a ton of yards. So, I think I prefer a more efficient overall offense in terms of a balanced offense, and knowing that if you do need to rely on him in a pinch, then if you're down and you need to come back, he's a guy who can come back.
Oh, yeah. And, do you think Green Bay and the Detroit Lions, Stafford's having a pretty good. Don't you think these guys would love to be able to run the ball like the Titans are? I mean,
oh yeah, for sure.
They would love it.
Absolutely. Yes. So for that question, I think we've kind of answered that here. Let's see what else in terms of the positives of this game. Rashard Matthews continues to perform at a top tier level at least in terms of Titans wide receivers. Another touchdown pass for him in this game, and really starting to look like he can be a very strong number 2 receiver, if not a number 1 receiver, the way he's playing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Greg Cosell said against San Diego, they treat him like a number 1, and he's putting the same time Mariota came on, I mean, is kind of when he came on too, which is no surprise. But if they had this wide receiver core, they could contend if the rest of the team was better. I think the wide receivers are fine.
I think so. I think it could overall they could probably be improved, and I don't know that we have an elite guy, but I would say it looked like they were inept, below average for a while. Now I think it's starting to look more like they're definitely an average group, if not an above average group, when you factor in Delaney and the way Rashard's playing, and Murray, the way he's been out of the backfield catching passes. So those were big positives from the game. The other big positive, and then I think we'll move into kind of the meltdown. But the other big positive for me would be Derrick Henry. He only had 8 carries, but he had 60 yards, 7.5 yards per carry. And really that was kind of a steady average. I mean, his long was only 17. So he was consistently getting good yardage. He did have the lone rushing touchdown of the day and looked good and looked like the guy that we thought we were getting in the preseason. And he hasn't had as many opportunities because of how Murray was playing early on. But I thought he looked really solid in this game.
I thought it was very telling that on the last drive when they needed to eat the clock up and they had to have, a first down, they brought him out there on the final drive too.
Yeah, for 2 of the plays.
Well, I mean, the first 2 run plays and then the third play was technically a pass, but
right.
The plan was for Henry to run out the clock. Mm-hmm. And the reason they had Henry out there is because they obviously thought he had a better chance to do it than Murray.
Yeah, and that, I think that ties directly into kind of the meltdown and what went on there. This issue with Murray we've been talking about for a few weeks now. I know Jamal's kind of pegged it and talked about how, it wasn't a problem, but it's something to kind of keep an eye on, and it may become a problem. And it is starting to look now like he's kind of banged up. And I don't know if you blame it on all the carries or if you just blame it on, just bad luck of him getting injured after playing a very difficult physical position. But he clearly did not look like himself today, DeMarco Murray. He had 17 carries, 43 yards, only averaged 2.5. And my issue isn't so much with him. It's just like, why would they have not stuck with Henry more? Because Henry, it was weird. They had him in there early. He was involved very early, looked great, got the touchdown. And then it's like, we got to get Murray back in there. And then we just saw Murray for consistently, and Henry here and there on a few plays. And then you mentioned the last drive. He got 2 carries on that final drive, our final offensive drive. But I don't know that I'm sure they're going to say Murray's better out of the backfield as a receiver, and I'm sure they're going to say he's a better pass blocker. But at what point do those benefits kind of start to be less than the fact that Henry's running the ball much better?
Well, that's my point on the last drive, that they definitely thought he was the better option then. But first of all,
when it was just about running the football, right? No worry for pass protection
Right. Going back to the San Diego game, he averaged, I'm talking Murray here, he averaged 3.6 yards per carry. He had the 75-yard run against Green Bay, which inflated his stats. But after that, he had 16 carries for, not very many yards. 75 minus 123, around 40-something yards. Then he averaged 3.3 against the Colts and then 2.5 today. So he's definitely struggling big time. And you didn't mention it, but he's got the turf toe or whatever.
Right, yeah, he does have an injury.
And so, but here's my deal with Henry, who I thought looked great today. They put him in there in very specific, straightforward running plays. It's easy to forget that early in the year he kind of struggled in short yardage, and they've shown some of the gifts of him messing up on pass protection.
Right.
And Murray had I want to say 5 or 6 targets today for 40 or 50 yards. He had 5 targets for 41 yards. So he's still, I think, a much better option in the passing game than Henry. So I think it's one of those deals where it looks to the fans like, Henry should be getting all the carries, but I don't think it's that simple.
Well, didn't they even early in the year? I remember, I'm pretty sure it was Malarkey commenting, or there was an article that was talking about the Titans wanted to have more formations this year where you wouldn't know what they were running or passing, because Malarkey felt in years past that it was kind of telling based on personnel. And I'm pretty sure I read that he wanted to change that this year to where it didn't matter who's on the field. You really weren't sure if the Titans were going to run or pass. And that might just be him, BSing about it. But it makes sense, because even as fans, we've talked about in years past, here comes Craig Stevens and Fasano. It's probably going to be a running play here. Whereas, this year when you've got a guy like Murray back there, he can run, or it could be a pass. It could be a third down run, a third down pass. You really don't know based on personnel. It's usually more about the formation.
To your original point, though, if this keeps up, it's going to have to lean more towards Henry because
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
You've got to get more production out of your running back than what Murray's done the last 3 out of 4 games. And he was so great the first half of the season. I'm sure that's also factored into, to just suddenly all of a sudden make Henry the featured back is. But I mean, they got 4 games left, so they can't squander a lot of time trying to get Murray going again. So
exactly. Yeah, I don't. It's just I can't figure out why they didn't go to him today when it was clear he had the hot hand. I know a lot of fans are disappointed by that. It's like you said, there's a lot of things going on, but I mean, Murray he was looking, clearly banged up today, and especially with that last drive. I know they had Henry in there for 2 plays, and then on 3rd and 2. Which this is kind of an even bigger problem that we're starting to see for a smash mouth team. It's pretty discouraging that we keep coming up short on these 3rd and 4th short plays. I mean, that's when we should be dominant with this offensive line and with this team built the way they are. I mean, even Mariota's a threat to run. So I can't figure out if it's play calling, if it's personnel, if it's all the above. But that's very discouraging that they can't convert these 3rd and 4th and shorts.
I think it was 3rd and 2, which I mean, still, if you're a great running team, I guess but the Bears defense is actually not, they're not chopped liver. They were doing a pretty good job.
I think that's kind of back to Mariota. That's kind of lost in this is that might have been one of the better defenses he's performed well on all year. And maybe even trying to think, maybe even the best, honestly. In terms of just defense that he's looked great against. The Vikings probably better defense, but he didn't play well that game. Texans maybe.
Oh yeah, I was going to bring this up. The drive chart. I mean, the final 3 drives really do taint what would have been a very good win. I think they had 9 drives, and obviously
or the Bears.
We did. I'm not counting the end of half or whatever, but. Okay, they went 3 and out to open the game. Then they go touchdown, punt, touchdown, field goal, field goal. So, I mean, they're just scoring on the Bears almost on every drive. And then they get the last 3 drives, and then the wheels just come off, really.
Mm-hmm.
And otherwise, if they stop the first or second drive of the last 3 drives, this is actually a great win.
Yeah, it kind of mirrors that Browns game in a lot of ways, except this one was a little even more close for comfort than the Browns.
But that's not uncommon in the NFL. Look at some of the games the Titans lost. They came back on the Lions. So we've actually done this to other teams. We came back on the Raiders, the Chargers, the Texans the first time.
Right.
This is, you don't really blow teams out in the NFL like that. You don't just do it from start to finish. The other team usually makes a run at the end, and the defense plays softer and all that kind of stuff. So,
yeah, I think the coaching staff needs to. Hopefully, Malarkey has the Bears receivers on his Christmas list. That was pretty fortunate. What happened with the Bears wide receivers? I think they had. Let me see if I can find it. I had the stat earlier. They had something like 11 drops today. It was including 2 on the final drive when they could have. Let's see. Okay, 10 drops today, and PFF said that is the most for a team in a game in the Pro Football Focus era. So 2006 to 2016. The most drops in a game, and 2 of them came in the end zone, which would have probably won the game for the Bears. And keep in mind, I mean, Titans did have their timeouts and would only have needed a field goal, but even so, I think you even said in your post game write up, I thought they got a little too conservative in the second half, and I mean, it's hard to. I definitely think the coaches are at fault for sure. But when you consider just how bad the Bears have been, and I think you said this and a couple other people were saying this, you really don't expect them to just suddenly turn it on like they did, especially when it's a quarterback who threw his first NFL touchdown pass today. So it's kind of like everything going bad at once. Casey went out of the game, as you pointed out, and McCourty was out of the game. And all of a sudden, Barkley starts feeling it, and then we're in trouble. So,
well, listen to this. Okay, obviously they had the touchdown drive in the first quarter, right?
yeah, the early one.
Before the final 3 drives, this is their yards gained on each drive. 9 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards, 17, 9. Then they put the 52-yard drive that ended in an interception. Then minus 3 yards on the next drive. So you can kind of give them a little slack for being conservative. You're burning clock against what looks like the worst offense in the NFL.
Right.
I mean, they can't even get a first down. So you kind of understand why risk getting all this stuff. And I do think Barkley's not getting – he was pretty amazing in the fourth quarter. He was playing great. And who would have ever dreamed that after the first 9 drives or whatever? They were pathetic.
And you referenced this in your post as well, and I totally agree. I think the pass rush deserves absolutely as much criticism as the secondary, because they were – I mean, it's like, what happened to Morgan? That guy was insane last week against the Colts, looking like, I mean, a man possessed. They couldn't block him in the second half. This week, I don't even know if we got close to the guy. It was especially in the second half.
I heard Malarkey's post game, and I saw some of this myself when I was watching the game. The Bears were max protecting, and they were keeping the running backs in. They were doing a great job protecting Barkley, and they were chipping Morgan, and they were chipping Arepko too. So, and I think it really hurt them. This hasn't been mentioned yet, but McCourty and Jarrell Casey went out.
Right. Yeah.
And that to me, that devastated the defense, not having Casey on the interior. And this is crazy to me right here. The Bears in the last 8.5 minutes of the game ran 35 plays. 35 plays. Only 3 of those were runs. So
wow.
If those guys had to be physically exhausted, you know, they couldn't pass rush, I'm sure, by the time after the first drive was over when they scored a touchdown, because the Titans went 3 and out and punted the ball right to them, and then they're marching again. So it's basically the Bears got the perfect storm with the Titan injuries and everything. But hey, they won the game. And that can't be said enough. This is the NFL. You know, they're not trying to get ranked. This is the NFL. Yep. They won the game on the road.
Indeed. Yep, a win is a win. Bears dropped and I wouldn't say fumbled, but kind of dropped their chances there at the end. But yeah, I think Malarkey, obviously, I think if he looked back on this, he would probably have changed a few things about the way they did that second half. I would have liked to have seen one more score. I would have came out really aggressive there when they had the drive where they ran it 3 times, because I don't think they didn't get anything after the onside kick, did they? I think they ended up having to punt after they got that anyway, if I remember right.
No, they threw an interception.
Interception. Okay, yeah. So they didn't get anything out of that. I would have came out on that next drive, and I would have went full throttle again to try and get that one more touchdown. Well, then I would dial it back.
That's exactly the drive I would fault the coaches on, because that's the drive where they gave the ball to Murray 3 times, and they finished it on the 1-yard line, and it was kind of like they were already burning clock right there.
Exactly.
And you know, a touchdown is a huge difference right there.
Yeah,
because then three touchdowns, and the Bears are still behind then.
Like you said, I don't care who it is. In the NFL, you cannot start running clock in the third quarter and just settling for field goals. That's way too risky. And even a guy like Barkley made him nearly made him pay a huge price. But yeah, that was the drive, especially with the way Mariota was playing. I mean, that guy was ridiculous today. We haven't even – I know we've talked about him already, but we can't say enough about some of those throws he was making, deep throws down the field, fitting it right where it needed to be. I don't even think he was touched this game in terms of pass protection. And I posted in the game thread at the time, it's like, this guy is lights out in the red zone, and you're going to run it 3 straight times inside the 10. I mean, come on. And then if you're going to run it, you're going to give it to the guy who's struggling instead of giving it to Derrick Henry, who's averaging 7.5 yards per carry today. I didn't understand that at all, especially running it 3 straight times and then not even giving Mariota one chance. Because even on these other drives he's had in recent weeks, if you watch, they'll try like 2 runs and they won't get it in, and then on 3rd down he'll throw a touchdown. It's exactly what happened today when they were for the red zone touchdown that they got. So I agree. That drive was one that I would hope Mularkey would say he'd like to have back and that he would have done a little bit differently.
Oh, well, at the time, though, I have to admit, I was kind of greedily thinking, I want Mariota to pad his touchdowns. I wasn't even thinking, oh, they better score a touchdown or else they might lose this game, because at the time, that's not even crossing your mind.
Right. Yep. He's on my both my fantasy teams. So I was wanting more touchdowns too. I'm surprised they haven't tried more runs near the goal line with him too, like play action fakes and rollouts, and you don't see him do that much.
I would guess that the defense is probably pretty aware of
waiting on it.
Yeah. One more thing on the last 3 drives I wanted to bring up that I saw on Twitter. On all 3 of the last Bear drives, they converted 3 3rd and longs, 3rd and 6 or more, on each one of the drives, and a couple of 4th downs in there. So, if the defense
basically nothing at receiver.
But to have to convert 3 on each one of the drives, so a total of 9 in those last 3 drives, it's pretty crazy that they converted all those third and longs.
Yep. So all in all, like you said, deep sigh of relief. In the end, the Titans get the win, and your guy, your franchise guy, the main guy that we need to play well, played well. And we also had everything elsewhere in the league went our way in terms of the games that needed to happen. And now we're in a situation where you start to wonder, is this secondary, going to be able to hold up? Is this defense going to be able to hold up enough to get us a chance? Because down the stretch, we absolutely have a chance. All the little playoff odds and trackers and everything you can find, if the Titans run the table and win their next 4 games, they're almost assuredly going to make the playoffs. I don't think anybody expects us to win the next 4. We've got one coming up it's going to be at home against Denver. Then we go to Arrowhead, and then we've got the Jags and the Texans to close out the season. Texans game is at home. Jags is on the road. So 2 of those games on the road here, and 2 of them against what many people would say are marquee teams. They're playing right now as we're recording this show. Looks like Denver just went ahead. They're ahead 10-9 at this point. The thing is, neither of those offenses really scare you, but the way our defense is playing, Matt Barkley just destroyed us. So they've got a lot to think about in this bye week, and it's too late in the year to obviously they can't make any trade. They're not going to sign anybody to come in and start at cornerback this late in the year. And to their credit, I mean, they're rotating these younger guys in to see if they can do a better job. And so far, it's just not helping. I mean, I think in terms of what you hope for as Titans fans, you just have to hope that the pass rush finds itself again, because these corners are not going to be able to hold up, especially if we even a guy, you look at the rest of the quarterbacks, they really don't have any good quarterbacks left. So that's a good sign. Alex Smith is the best one left.
The Broncos or Chiefs are not going to throw the ball 40 or 50 times.
No.
They're going to run the ball. And, against those teams, I think even though the defense, makes you wonder if they can legitimately make a playoff run, against those 2 teams, if you can keep it close and give Mariota the ball late,
Mhm.
You know, you've got to. I think they have a chance to win those 2 games. I'm not saying they will win one or both of them, but I think with Mariota they have a chance because I don't think those teams will exploit the secondary to the point of making it insurmountable amount of points they're going to need.
On one hand, I agree with you, but I never expected Barkley to do what he did either, with no help at receiver, basically.
Well, you take Casey and McCourty off the Titans defense though, and you're talking about Barkley and the Bear receivers on our defense, basically.
Yeah. I mean, in Denver, at least in terms of receiver, we're talking a whole different ball game here. I mean, those receivers are drastically better than what Chicago has right now with Jeffrey being out, and even when he's healthy, I think you'd take Denver's group. But yeah, I mean, they've got the bye week to try and sort some of this out. Hopefully the Casey and McCourty injuries aren't too serious. I didn't hear anything about it, so it doesn't sound like they're going to be major, but
no, it sounds like they'll both be fine from what I saw on Malarkey, from what Malarkey said, and I saw McCourty say he just had a bone bruise.
So yeah, I mean, in terms of being positive and hoping for the best case scenario, you've got a week to prepare for the Broncos, and it's at home. So you're going to get to try and sort and figure out these issues. And I think it's going to be very similar in terms of at least game plan. I wonder if they won't try to do I wouldn't say try to do the same thing. So let me back up on that. But it does make me think of the Vikings game where for Mariota, it's going to be important for him not to make that big mistake because this Broncos defense is a really, really solid defense. They're going to get pressure. Von Miller, as long as he's out there, Derek Wolfe, Brandon Marshall. I mean, all those guys, Shane Ray, the younger guy, they're going to get pressure. And it's just a matter of he's got to keep making these good decisions. We saw him throw it away several times today when he was in trouble, didn't take the sack. So he's going to need to keep that up for us to have any shot at winning.
Malarkey praised him after the game today for some of the throwaways he made.
Really? Yeah.
Yes. They're going to have to run the ball too. To keep Von Miller off Mariota, they're going to have to run the ball. So, if Murray's not a lot better after the bye, they're going to have to go ahead and start transitioning pretty fast.
Yeah, that ties into what you're saying earlier. I think it's going to be interesting to see how hard-headed and steadfast are they going to be with Murray. I'm sure they're going to build up this idea of him, getting healthier over the bye, and he's feeling better now. But I would strongly consider a more balanced attack in terms of Murray and Henry. I'm not even asking for Henry to get most of the carries, but for today he had 8 to Murray's 17. I mean, today it should have at least been an even split.
You didn't want the 2.5 yards per carry that Murray was putting up?
Welcome back, sir.
Thank you.
No, we actually, I was kind of just jumping back. We actually already talked about the Henry Murray stuff, but we were kind of talking about it in terms of this Broncos game coming up after the bye.
No, I was listening for a good 5 minutes before I jumped.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Catch my bearings.
Yeah. So we're going to, I agree, Scotty. We're going to have to be able to run on those guys. And I wonder, will they be able to say and kind of admit, Murray is not performing as well right now and go with the hot hand and go with Henry, because if you don't run on the Broncos, then you're going to, you can't just let them tee off on Mariota. And even though the pass protection is much better this year, I still think the Broncos are going to get pressure.
Well, I'll say this about, being hard-headed, about changing. Malarkey has been pretty fast he fired the special teams coach pretty fast, and he called out the receivers and made changes with the receivers. And, I think he knows this is his last coaching job, and I don't think he's going to, set on something very long before he makes a change for the good of himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't know if you guys touched on it before, but did you guys touch on Murray's receiving this last game? I think he had 5 catches.
Scotty talked about his targets.
Okay, I think he had 5 catches for 41 yards or something.
Yeah,
he did.
So even if you're looking at total yards, he ended up doing all right. and and I think that there's probably a decent bit of it is, I know Scotty's posted about it on TitansReport.com, but pass protection and effectiveness in the pass game is going to be a big part of why they keep him out there, even though he's not performing well over really probably the last 4 weeks. I don't know that they're going to make a big transition, and I think that maybe it'll be incremental, but I think they're going to try and just get Murray healthy and keep feeding him the ball. That would be my prediction. Even if he doesn't succeed.
I don't know if Henry would look as good carrying the full load as he has in the opportunities they've given him. Yeah, and I'm saying right now Henry I think is a clearly better runner, but when you add in the pass protection, short yardage, the pass receiving, all that stuff, I'm not sure people would be as happy with Henry getting all that as they are just watching him get these set run plays.
Mm-hmm. If I had infinite time, I'd really be interested in going back and looking at Henry's runs each game and just trying to see if there's a common thread, because one of the things I wonder with him is, does he have the full, I mean, you think about this with quarterbacks all the time, but as a running back, is he really in the full playbook? I mean, if Murray got injured,
exactly,
would we be running the same run plays, or does he have a limited exposure right now? And it's almost like we have Derrick Henry packages.
Yeah, it's a fair question.
But I will say this, man, he looks really good on some of those runs. If he gets his pass protection and everything down, he looks like he's going to be a really good featured running back.
Yeah, because he's fast and he glides. He's got a stiff arm. And the thing is, he doesn't even have to lower the shoulder to gain yards after contact. He just has to be moving. He's so big.
He's so good at getting 4 or 5 yards on a play that should only get 1 or 2.
Scotty, this question from TitansReport.com sounds like it's for you here. Let me find the user. Titans279 is the user. He says, Mike Mularkey, great coach or the greatest coach? I'm sure he's being sarcastic there.
I wouldn't put him in either category, but I would say he's done a great job this year. And as I said from the start, he's going to do as well as Mariota's going to do. I think it's funny that a lot of people are going, Mariota. Yeah, it's always about the quarterback. If he had Jake Locker or Blaine Gabbert, he would suck. But the offense has done a lot better in more than just quarterbacking. You know, they're better at pass protecting and better at running the ball.
We kind of already answered this one. This question from Aussie Titan Fan 08. Is the secondary just too far broken to mount a playoff run over the last 4 weeks? I think we've kind of come down on no, but only because of the quarterbacks that we're facing.
If they were playing Tom Brady and Russell Wilson and, Andrew Luck, the season would be over. And, I have my doubts about whether or not they can make a playoff run anyway. If I had to bet, I'd say they won't make the playoffs. But these games, like we were talking about, I don't know if you were here, Jamal, but they can stay in with the Broncos and Chiefs just because those aren't explosive passing games.
They're not explosive until they face us. We'll see. We'll see.
Well, they won't game plan. They're not going to throw the ball 35, 40 times. That's not going to be their plan. They're going to try to run the ball and not make mistakes.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I've seen such little good from this secondary. I mean, this game, you guys probably already touched on it, but what a pathetic joke. I mean, it's like I was embarrassed watching that game. I was truly embarrassed. More for the Bears wide receivers than our secondary, but it was close. Like, how pathetic. But anyway, I have no faith in them. Could the other team just not be good at passing and that makes it so that it's not an Achilles heel? Maybe. But I suspect that they probably will keep us from making the playoffs one way or another, whether it's because they get completely torched or because they're just not good enough and the other team manages to do just enough. They're going to be a weak link for us.
Yeah.
Well, there's also no room for error anymore. They basically can't lose a game.
Did you guys look at Houston and Indy's schedules, though?
Yeah. We haven't talked about it on here, though. I've looked at them over the past few weeks a lot.
It's interesting. They don't have easy schedules either.
And they're not good teams.
Yeah, well, that's true, too. But, I mean, Houston's got at Green Bay and then at Indy. I think we want Indy to win that, right? But at Green Bay, at Indy. Then they have Jacksonville. I'll give them a guaranteed win there. They have Cincinnati, and then they play us. They could lose all of those.
They could lose every one of those games.
They could also win all of those.
They should
because none of those other teams are that good.
They should have beat the Raiders on Monday night. They were a better team than the Raiders on Monday night.
Here's
the Raiders. You know,
I don't know if you had that one pulled up, Jamal, too, but I'll read through it real quick. They've got at the Jets on Monday night. They're going to be favored, absolutely, but remains to be seen if Andrew Luck's still out. I mean, he's in the concussion protocol. That's going to be Monday night. He's probably going to be out by then and be able to play, but that's a game you expect them to win. Then they've got the Texans game, which obviously how that one goes will factor into a lot of what the rest of the season looks like. Then they go to Minnesota. Minnesota's kind of fallen apart. Their defense is still pretty solid, though, and it's at Minnesota. Then they're at the Raiders. You guys were talking about the Raiders. They struggled on Monday night, and today what a weird game. I don't know if you guys saw that. They were pretty much dominating the Panthers. Panthers came back to tie it, actually took the lead, and then Raiders ended up winning it at the end. But, yeah, so that's kind of a toss-up game. And then you probably give them the win against the Jags to close out the year. So I would say we probably have the toughest schedule. You think? Or is it pretty much just
I think they're all three about the same, I would say.
The best thing going for us is we only have 4 games. They've got 5. More chances for losses there, I guess. It's for wins too, but
well, it's like I said last week when we were talking about this, they just have to win. I mean, that's all they can do is win.
Yeah.
And
on all the go ahead.
I was going to bring up the Raider game too. You know, the Raiders blew the same kind of lead that the Titans did today. Now they came back and won anyway, but they blew a lead just like the Titans did today.
Man, sorry, I had it on mute. That doesn't help. Yeah, so the great thing though, guys, and we haven't even mentioned this yet, we haven't even been able to have this conversation for years now. I mean, we're heading into the final quarter of the season, final 4 games, and we're actually able to have this discussion, and it's a legitimate discussion that Titans are right there in the midst of things. So at least that is nice to have.
And people are angry because the win wasn't good enough today. How about that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Angry because it seemed like the classic conservative go into a shell and lose the game, only the other team just didn't want to win. The nice thing, I mean, part of me feels like, well, we're only in a playoff discussion because the division sucks, and to a certain extent that's true, but we are 500, and going into the bye week and coming out of it against the defending Super Bowl champs who are having a good year, we have a chance to win that game. Like, it wouldn't shock me if we won that game.
Yeah.
And that's a really good place to be.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if the point spread's not like a pick 'em, or maybe the Broncos by 1 at most. Because I mean, they're not
really?
they're not a juggernaut. They can struggle against anybody.
They're down 16-10 now, looks like, against
late,
Kansas City.
Late third quarter there.
They kind of grind out these close wins. I mean,
the quarterback Trevor Siemian, Simeon, however you say that, is he's been sacked 4 times this game. So maybe we can get some pressure. We need to get our pass rush back.
I think the Chiefs game on the road's a lot more daunting task than the
Yeah,
Broncos.
I agree.
And I'm not saying they won't lose them both. They could lose them both.
Yeah, but if they win either one of those games, the last two games actually still matter because the way this division can shake out. From everything we've figured out, kind of looking at the tiebreakers and all, the Titans are going to have to finish a full game ahead of the Texans and obviously the Colts because they've lost them twice. So any tie with either one of those teams, and they're going to lose the division, which is why 9-7 makes it pretty unlikely. 10-6 almost certainly gets it done. 9-7 though, I mean, I've ran the little, you can go through and kind of pick the games on all these playoff projection tools, and there's absolutely a chance. I mean, we read through the schedules there of the other teams. I think it's actually greater than 50% if we
beat the Broncos. Hey, if they beat the Broncos,
I'll pull it up while you finish that.
If they beat the Broncos, things get very real
Right.
because they should beat Jacksonville, and I would say they should beat the Texans at home. So if they beat the Broncos, I think the discussion starts becoming realistic.
Oh yeah, if they beat the Broncos, especially given the way the bye goes for those other teams, I mean that's when it really starts to get serious. At that point, you'll really start to evaluate all the scenarios from there.
Well, if they beat the Broncos, you'd have to look at it and say they could beat all four of those teams, right? I mean, it's pretty exciting if we could beat the Broncos. It's just we gotta do it. I mean, we've had 4 opportunities to get over 500 so far this year, and we haven't managed it. So, those losses in the division to Houston and 2 of them to Indy are killing us.
I'll say this though, even if they find a way to finish out this season 9-7, I would be incredibly pleased with that, with the kind of where they're at right now and what's left on the schedule. Because if they go 9-7, that means they beat either the Broncos, most likely beat the Broncos or the Chiefs. Well, they have to win one of those games and then close out the final 2 games.
And it means they probably end up 500 in the division too.
Hey, they gave up some games too earlier. I mean, so they have been competitive. If they finish 9-7, if they finish 9-7 and we're competitive in almost every game, that's a huge improvement.
Yeah. So running this little New York Times playoff simulation thing here, given everything that's happened today, if the Titans beat the Broncos, their chances jump to 33%. If we beat, let's go ahead and give them a loss to the Chiefs and then say they win the final 2. Yeah, so that would put them finishing at 9-7 with a loss to the Chiefs. Their chances are greater than 50%, puts them at 57% chance. And this is just simulating this many times. And it is based, it's not just a 50-50 flip. I know there was, if any of you have looked at this, you can just Google New York Times playoff simulator. It's pretty fun to play around with. It's not just a straight 50-50 flip on games. There's actually a rating system they use. So they don't treat a Patriots-Jags game as 50-50. They're going to heavily favor New England. But yeah, so I mean, that 57% chance if you go 9-7, and obviously let me go ahead and put a win against the Chiefs. Yeah, if they beat the Chiefs, it's a 99% chance that they are in the playoffs. So 10-6 would absolutely get it done. 9-7, you still got a chance.
Interesting.
Yep.
We'll see what happens. Are we going to record next week?
I don't know. I was thinking about that too. Maybe just take a week off, but because I don't know what more we would add, unless, I mean, let's just kind of say we'll reserve our judgment, because if things happen kind of crazy Sunday, well, because the Colts don't play until Monday, right? So I was going to say if the Colts lost and the Texans lost again, that might warrant a show, but we won't know the Colts result until Monday night. We'll see. I would say most likely no, but we might record one if anything crazy happens.
If Mike Mularkey gets fired, I'll be here to record.
Did y'all see the Mariota stat a first or second year quarterback with 8 or
Mhm.
more games with 2 TD passes. The only other person that did it was Dan Marino.
Yep.
Man, and Dan Marino never won a Super Bowl. That's a bad group to be in.
And even if you expand it out to not the first two, hold on, I don't want to quote this incorrectly. Let me pull it up here. Kaharski, you may have, I'm sure you guys saw this too, but there was one stat he was mentioning today that basically only Brady has been better than Mariota in one particular thing here. Let's see. Paul Kaharski. Fill time, Jamal. Fill time. What's going on in your life?
So I bought my wife a new sewing machine. This is
that's interesting.
riveting podcast material. I was actually laying in bed with my son there. I was thinking, man, I have to get back on that podcast. I have too many thoughts. I was like, I might have to write a post about what I think.
And now when I've given you the floor to speak.
We've covered most of it since then.
Yeah. Of course, anytime you try to find something on Twitter, you can't find it. It was one of his recent tweets. I remember what it was.
Want to say,
it was that annoying.
Henry is clearly better than DeMarco Murray.
Running the ball.
I was just being sarcastic.
Yeah, there was a question: why does Jamal hate DeMarco Murray? So,
why do I hate DeMarco Murray? Because he almost lost us this game. How about that?
Hey, that works. Yep.
He had a fumble too.
He did at the goal line, basically. Come on.
He honestly, in this game, in the last game too, he really looked like Eddie George after he was done, which I almost have to say it's the toe injury because he was so good the first half of the season.
Well, yeah. I mean, my biggest worry was, you look at the stats on the people who got over the 400 touches in a single season, and most of them have a real short career afterwards. And I think, we've talked about it leading up to this, that they were playing with fire, giving him as high a percentage of the carries. And then they do things like, last week he wasn't playing well and they gave 0 carries to Derrick Henry. I mean, they're pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And it gets more and more absurd as the years gone on. And really, hopefully he can heal up over the bye week and get a little bit back, because early in the season he was so good. Like, he just had pop all the time, and he was just popping out so many plays of the game where I was just like, oh my God, he's so good. And now it's just like, it's a real big bummer. I mean, even if Derrick Henry can come in and be pretty good, the odds that he's as good as DeMarco Murray was, a complete back like DeMarco Murray was early in the year, are low. I hope they didn't kill him.
I think last week was proof that if they don't have like straightforward runs for Henry, that they don't want to put him in the game.
Callius is giving me a hard time for saying Trevor Seaman instead of Trevor Siemian. On Titans Report. I did finally find that stat I was looking for, by the way. I hate this thing with the ESPN tweets where it takes you to their website when you want to read the full tweet instead of just banning it. Ugh, they just want the clicks. But yeah, anyway. So Marcus Mariota, this is from Paul Kaharski, has now thrown multiple passing touchdowns in a franchise record 8 consecutive games. In the last 2 seasons, only Tom Brady has done better, with 9 to start the 2015 season. So he's only looking at 2 years, but I mean, that just shows you how consistent he's been, especially in terms of touchdowns over the past 8 games.
Interesting. So if he gets it after the bye week, if he throws for 2 touchdowns, then he will tie Tom Brady, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And against a defense like the Broncos, I think that's really going to start to turn heads if he keeps this multiple touchdown streak going against the Chiefs and the Broncos.
Heads are turned pretty well. He's gotten the attention of national media at this point. And I think that if the Titans had a more legitimate shot at the playoffs right now, he'd be getting tons of hype.
I don't think the people that aren't, bragging on him more, they're just not paying attention, because I don't think it can be understated how good he's been.
Well, yeah. I guess I mean that's what I mean. If we were truly in the discussion right now and they had to pay attention to us more, everyone would be all over it.
Yes.
I mean, it's so good.
Especially that red zone stat. Jamal loves that one.
Oh, that's ungodly.
It really is. It's amazing. Well, I think we're going to wrap up here, guys. So, any final thoughts here?
Did you guys talk about whether or not Dick LeBeau is just done or what?
I didn't talk about that one.
I don't think so.
You think it's just personnel?
Oh God, yes. I mean, you take Jarrell Casey and McCourty hasn't been that great, but it's so obvious that they have to blitz and they have to play man coverage because if they sit back, they have no chance at all. And when they do blitz, they get burned. Their linebackers and cornerbacks and everything are so bad.
Wesley Woodyard, he's the only one with a decent game today.
Yeah, and he's just a guy.
Right.
So I really think they need so much more talent on defense. And that's something that can be easily done too. So that's pretty promising, really.
Especially with 2 first-round picks and lots of money to spend.
Yeah. I don't think Dick LeBeau has lost it, really. I mean,
yeah, it's hard for me to fault him. I mean, I don't know if you look for him to adjust in a better way, but this secondary has just been atrocious for a while now, and there's only so much you can do.
I would say he's probably overachieved with the guys they have.
I think they got to figure out the pass rush. I mean, that's my biggest thing right now because the secondary is not going to get any better. The pass rush has actually been there at times, and like you said earlier, Scotty, they were doing a good job of protection today. But man, you've got to find a way to get back there more often.
Well, they do a good job getting sacks. They don't necessarily do a good job of getting pressure on the quarterback. You know what I mean? They get a sack. A difference. Yes, there's a difference. They don't put constant pressure on the passer. Barkley had way too much time all day long.
Yeah, he even said, I don't know if you guys saw that quote. He said, I felt like I had all day to throw.
Oh, God.
In the How the Titans Make the Playoffs thread, 8MM says, let us know when it's 100%. Be sure to do that. I'm just going to check that thread over on titansreport.com, make sure we didn't miss any other. I think we hit everybody's questions. So at least all the serious ones and even some of the not so serious ones. We even got to the one about why does Jamal hate DeMarco Murray. So, all right, guys, that's another victory for the Titans. Moved to 6-6 on the year, trying to get over that 500 hump that they've been at so many points throughout the year. I think Pro Football Talk had a tweet today about that they've been like 2-2, 3-3, 4-4, 6-6. There've been a couple of times throughout the year we've been right at 500.
Well, we were 1-1 to start as well.
They were 1-3 after 4.
Yeah, they were 1-3, and then they won the 2 in a row against the. So I guess they were never 2-2. They were 3-3 at one point, then 4-4, then 5-5, and now 6-6.
Yeah, I think we've only missed 2-2.
Yep, that's the only one.
Constantly have to dig out of a hole just to get back to 500.
Yep. All right, guys. Any last minute thoughts here?
No,
I'm just getting something, but
this is not related to the Titans, but I loved it. Did y'all see Terrell Pryor and Janoris Jenkins tweet exchange?
No, I didn't.
It was great. You know, Terrell Pryor had like 133 yards on Jenkins today.
Ooh.
And Jenkins wrote, Terrell Pryor, he tweeted this to him. You're a shit eater to me. You really suck. Pryor responded to him, you're a great corner, solid defender. You played a solid game. God bless. Good luck the rest of the year. I don't know. I just thought that was hilarious.
Wow. He takes the high road. All right, guys, I'll leave the listeners with this final thought here. This is a thread I posted Marcus Mariota has now played in 12 games in 2016, and remember that is how many games he played in last season, 12 games before the injuries kept him out of those other 4 games. Let's just compare some numbers here. 2,818 yards in 2015. 2016, he's up that 2,998 yards. 19 touchdowns to 25 touchdowns. 10 interceptions to 8 interceptions. 62.2% completion to 64.3% completion. 7.6 yards per attempt last year, 7.9 this year. 2 rushing touchdowns this year, 2 rushing touchdowns last year. 252 rushing yards last year versus 310 this year. And then probably the biggest ones here to close us out. This year, his quarterback rating, 101.9 compared to 91.5 last year. And last year, through 12 games, this guy was sacked 38 times. This year, 18. Quite a difference that a year makes.
He's probably played more quarters this year than last year because he was knocked out
definitely
in a couple of those games. So he probably would have about the same rushing yards and more passing yards, but his touchdowns and his completion percentage are up so much.
I don't even think
in terms of pass attempts, he had 370 last year. This year he's at 378. So he's had 8 more attempts, and then this year he's completed 243. Last year he'd completed 230. So those are pretty close. I didn't pull the rushing attempts, but I'm pretty sure he's got more rushing attempts this year, which would coincide with the comment about more quarters this year. Go ahead, Scotty.
I don't think those numbers even tell how great a leap he's made because of the struggles the first 4 games. You know, those first 4 games are dragging down his numbers. Since week 5, I mean, his numbers have just skyrocketed compared to last year.
Yep.
Because after 4 games, I believe he was on pace for a much worse season this year than last year.
Probably so, especially in terms of the rating and turnovers at that point. Well, that's going to close us out for this week, guys. Once again, this has been the Two-Tone Crew, the official podcast of TitansReport.com. You can find us, of course, online at TitansReport.com. We are on Twitter at TitansReport. We have a Facebook page, facebook.com/TitansReport. You can leave us a voicemail, 615-900-0282. Once again, that's 615-900-0282. This week, if you're wondering where I was pulling all these questions from before the podcast, I actually went over to TitansReport.com, created a discussion thread there, and allowed the users on the board to post questions. So if you're not a member, you should check it out. It's a pretty cool place. A lot of dedicated Titans fans there. And also, you can rate and review us on iTunes. We are on Stitcher. We're on Android. Pretty much anywhere you can find podcasts, you can get the show. So let us know your thoughts, rate and review us, and we'll talk to you guys again soon.